Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
Please continue to hold for the next available representative.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
We appreciate you waiting and waiting. What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream. Let's get to 100 likes. You guys know the drill. The face cam doesn't go on until we get 100 likes. Also, make sure if you guys have any super chats, you send them in via the super chat function. We're setting a goal tonight, 10 yellow or above super chats. And at the end of the stream, we will read regular chat. But we have a lot to get to tonight. I know it's a little bit of a late stream. I've been busy, but still wanted to stream for you guys today. We have a lot to talk about, including Donald Trump's first big major test. Is he betraying the base on immigration? Because a lot of people are asking that question. And he's definitely sending mixed signals. I don't think that you can objectively analyze the situation and say that he's not, but I will go over the recent reports, and I'd also like to get to the thoughts of the people on that as well. Also, you have these No Kings protests that were largely a disaster. You had some that got okay turnout. There was, the left touting pictures from San Diego. We don't know who's there for the beach, who's there for the protest. But all over America, it was mostly a bunch of just old Democrat boomers. That's their enthusiastic base. People who unironically consume mainstream media. That's all they have. And that's why their coalition is not stable in the long run. That is a coalition that will win you every little special election and not much past that point. And that's why they will cling to these overperformances that we've talked about. Also, the Minnesota tragedy where the two lawmakers, one was a moderate Democrat, one was a standard Democrat, were shot by somebody who was impersonating a police officer who has just a very mixed political background of sorts, was targeting people on the left, no doubt about it. But we will cover it, and we'll cover what's going on in that department. So make sure you guys like the stream. We're ready to roll, and that we are. Two major litmus tests for Donald Trump, and one of them is immigration, one of them is foreign policy. Both up to this point, he's been phenomenal on both. There's no real taking away from that. He ended the border crisis day one. He's initiating mass deportations. The deportation numbers have been rising. They've been doing these ICE raids. You had ICE protests. Trump sent in the Marines to put out these ICE riots. There were protests. Some of them turned into riots. When fire happens, it's a riot. That's kind of the, the baseline that you'd like to use for that. So Donald Trump has done a great job on immigration. He won the election on immigration. He won a record number of Hispanic voters on the issue of immigration because he promised mass deportations. But Donald Trump recently has paused immigration arrests at farms, hotels, and restaurants, which he has claimed and this is a report. It has not been denied. It was in emails back and forth to the Wall Street Journal. Now, sometimes there's a thing called strategic leaking. We have to be objective here and analyze the full picture. You have so many people that will use things like this because they're bad faith actors who try to get that, gotcha on Trump for one reason or another. Either they don't understand a lot of the data regarding deportations, the same type of people that like to, spout the lies about, oh, Biden deported more people. It's like, yeah, you turn people away at the border. It's a deportation. There's nobody crossing the border illegally, so you can't really count those as deportations. So almost all the deportations have come from the U.S., but given the economic data, we've seen it's very likely that if you include self-deportations, you've already seen 1 million people exit the country, which is absolutely huge, and it's massive. And when you deport some people, you deport the rest of them. So if this report's true, that'd be a problem. If it is permanent, it would be a problem. Now, maybe you could say, well, they're going to go after other people first because Trump has come out and said that he's not backing down on his deportations. I think you can walk and chew gum at the same time. The whole point of this is we don't want these corporations to be able to bring in the cheap labor in the United States of America when you have Americans that would do those jobs if they were paid a proper wage. That's kind of the main baseline here. They talk about the service economy. They say manufacturing's gone. It's a service economy. And then they're trying to price out the Americans out of those jobs the same way that they've shipped manufacturing jobs overseas. Very interesting. But when you look at this, is this really, if this is a temporary pause to kind of cool down the temperature surrounding this, which I don't think you have to cool down. I think it's popular. If these people are here illegally, if they broke the law, they need to go. That's what I say. That's what I'm sticking to. It would be a major disappointment and a major stain on Trump's legacy. I'm not saying that this is going to be the case. I'm just saying that objectively speaking, there's room for optimism, and then there's also room for objectivity. And Trump was elected to do this job, or at least try. I know he probably is not going to be able to deport every illegal alien, but making sure that they pause these raids. Now, what you could say is, well, he'll do this, and then these illegals will apply for these jobs, and then we'll have them on record, and then it makes it easier for them to deport. That actually would make sense. And you do have a lot of people like Stephen Miller, who I know is not very happy about this if he's in the White House, but it's like, Donald Trump, what is he doing if that's the case? So there's two ways you could look at this. One, Donald Trump is betraying his base and he's backing off entirely on mass deportations. Or B, this is some temporary pause to maybe give these companies some sort of relief while Trump works out some deal with some, temp visas, and then also creates an even bigger backlog of people trying to apply to these jobs who are illegal and makes the deportation process expedited. So is that what he's trying to do? I'm not entirely sure. But one thing I do know is that the plan trusters have taken a lot of victories lately. A lot of victories to the point where it's whether it's a sunk cost fallacy, I'm not ready to say it's time to hit the panic button. But if this is something that it's like, oh no, he'll give amnesty to these people in these industries, because I understand there's a priority, chain for sure. And when you look at something like this right here, because you'll have people who are criminal illegal aliens. We know our criminals that are here that need to go. Priority number one, you got to keep the streets safe. The person who gets pulled over for a traffic ticket, who happened to be brought here when they were like 2, never got papers. I'm not saying they should be given amnesty. I don't think they should at all. But that person's probably not going to be as big of a priority to deport, obviously, as like the person who crossed the border during the Biden administration. So the end goal should remain the same, deport them all. I'm not saying you can't walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm not saying, no, only spend a year targeting the criminals and only deport maybe a couple 100,000. You don't get to the number that you actually need. So prioritizing is fine. Doesn't mean you can't walk and chew gum at the same time. And I'm also fine if you have an actual shortage of workers. and you actually start to raise the pay and you still can't find anybody, at that point, if there's a real shortage of workers and a proven shortage, temporary visas, that's something Trump's always supported. We've always had them. A lot of these workers they claim that we're going to lose are actually here legally on some sort of temp visa. They come in, they work, they send money back, which we're going to tax if the big beautiful bill passes, and then they go back home. That's typically how it should be done if you have it. The economists, it's like astrology, as people put it in the replies. It's astrology for men, essentially. It's not, it's real. I'm not saying economics aren't real, but there's so many moving parts to these things where you just have like this narrative that people cling to, and it eventually just resets itself. It blows up in the faces of all the panicans, so to speak, and you take it from there. So you have a lot of these people in these industries who, the industries may struggle to replace if they're going to be paying them the same amount, but that's kind of the problem. They shouldn't be able to get away with paying their workers less, and that's kind of one of the major problems with illegal immigration. But Donald Trump, is he backing off? Is he doing this permanently, temporary? We don't know. It's a litmus test, and we're about to find out, but Donald Trump did say this more recently. He said this a couple hours ago. Our nation's ICE officers have shown strength, determination, and courage as they facilitate a very important mission, the largest mass deportation operation of illegal aliens in history. Every day, the brave men and women of ICE are subjected to violence, harassment, and even threats from radical Democrat politicians, but nothing will stop us from executing our mission. He goes on and on to say that we must expand the efforts to deport and detain illegal aliens in America's largest cities like Chicago, LA, New York, where millions upon millions of illegal, because a lot of them live in these cities, which is true. That's where a lot of these people live, because the number, it's like, wait, 2% of the population's illegal. Well, a lot of them are in California. A lot of them are in Chicago. A lot of them are in New York. That's why those metros in part shifted so much to the right in 2024. And you look at this, and you kind of have this disconnect, I guess you would say, between like the agricultural secretary and Donald Trump, because the agricultural secretary wants a temporary pause so they could kind of not lose a bunch of workers. But that's kind of, the problem. It's a give and take. You have to get these people out of the country. You shouldn't be slow walking it. We saw raids in Trump's first term on processing plants, etc. You saw the jobs go to the locals. You saw them have increased pay. The economy resets itself. In many cases, if you have an actual shortage, fine. That's one thing. But usually the shortages are overblown and they're just an excuse to import mass third world migration so you can undercut wages, undercut American workers, and give the jobs to these people. That's what it's largely about, among many, many other things. Power is a big one. There's so many reasons why the left supports illegal immigration, and there's so many reasons why the right should oppose it instead of, joining in like so many people want to do, because they just don't understand politics. And I really hope that this is not being driven from garbage polling data that shows Donald Trump's approval rating among Hispanic voters dropping, which is not real. It never was real to begin with. These approval polls are going to be ripe with response bias. Crosstab diving is the largest sin that anybody could commit in poll analysis. There's no reason for people to do this and just dive and delve into the crosstabs of faulty polling, by the way, when there's many polls to the contrary, and just run with that tagline because it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And Trump is saying he wants these people to be deported. He wants to have the largest mass deportation in American history, but it's kind of contradictory. So you better hope that there is some 3D chess here to the plan. People will laugh at that. They'll scoff at that. They'll say, well, haha, look at you. You believe in this Trump chess thing or whatever. But it's happened time and time again. And point to example after example after example. If he goes out there and he puts the pause on and the numbers drop, it's going to be a problem, and it will be a stain on his legacy. If he gives those people amnesty or even entertains the idea of amnesty, even if he does get something minuscule in return, that would be a stain on his legacy. Could this be a negotiation tactic? Could it be some 3D, 4D chess? It absolutely could. And I think time will tell, but you have a lot of mixed signals here, and there's a lot we just don't know. It's not like he's caving if he's going out there to go on these long-winded rants about how he wants ICE to ramp up the efforts and he wants to support the largest funding for ICE in history if he's really pumping the brakes on these deportations. But there is the concern that a lot of these, big agricultural organizations are getting to him and telling him information, or you have stupid people on the right, smooth-brained people on the right who don't understand how polls work, that think that there's a poll that shows Trump's approval dropping among Hispanic voters, that it means that Donald Trump needs to ease off the rhetoric or ease off the policy. The rhetoric, first of all, it does not hurt him. We've seen that before. The policy also does not hurt him either. So you could even look at this, and I found this very interesting. CNN's exit polls usually have sucked in, the past, I guess you would say like 8 to 10 years, but they were pretty good in 2024 compared to the usual people that do well. Maybe they'll revise them. But this was crucial among Hispanic voters. Who do you trust to handle more on immigration? Now, Kamala Harris won the Hispanic vote, by the way, but she did not win it by a sizable margin. She won it by single digits. And the percentage of Hispanic voters that trusted her versus Trump on immigration was actually lower. It was just a 2-point margin. And those who trusted Harris backed Harris 93-2. Those who backed Trump and his immigration policy, who do they trust? Because if you trust Harris to handle immigration, that means you would rather have somebody who doesn't want to have mass deportations, and you would have somebody who takes the moderate approach. And if somebody votes for Trump but prefers Harris, that would mean that it was economic concerns, which were a thing. I'm not saying they weren't, but immigration was just as big of a concern, and it also tied into the economic side of things too, especially in the Hispanic community. Those who trusted Trump on immigration actually voted for Trump 87-11. So there's more Harris voting Hispanics that probably could be won in the future on the issue of immigration than Trump voting Hispanics that would leave him or leave the Republicans on the issue of immigration. So when you look at this, the Democrats, their rhetoric is awful on the issue completely. They're not winning Hispanic vote. Maybe they'll energize some like Hispanic leftists, La Raza types, for sure. They might try to do that to drive turnout and engagement. But for the Republicans to cave, they're not going to gain anything. They'll lose. They're going to lose because these people and their communities have been affected by illegal immigration, and a record amount of Hispanic voters have turned to Trump because of this, not in spite of his immigration policy, because of his immigration policy. And they left, in many cases, their families left these third world countries. Many cases they have assimilated to, varying degrees, of course, but they don't want to live in Mexico. They don't want to live in Central America or Cuba or Venezuela in many cases. And they don't want these people coming in illegally from these places en masse because their communities are going to look just like the communities that they departed for a reason. This is the problem with mass immigration. The immigration rate should be cut significantly. The Democrat 1990s abortion playbook, which sadly is becoming the Republicans' playbook, safe, legal, and rare, that should be the immigration playbook. Safe, you vet people. Extreme, legal, you don't want any illegal immigration. And rare, meaning we cut significantly. You ideally have like a net zero moratorium. Doesn't mean you have zero people coming in, but that's reserved for specific sets of visas, whether it's like K-1 visas, whether it's, certain groups that can assimilate well that might be escaping persecution in limited numbers. You have the Boers in South Africa, for example. They are societally, culturally compatible with the United States in a way that a lot of people from, Haiti are not. And we've seen the Biden administration dump hundreds of thousands of Haitians in small towns. And we have seen Trump take in about 50 Boers, but the Boers are the ones that get the blowback from the media. Interesting how that works. I wonder if it has to do with something a little bit different than just the objective analysis of the situation. But That's a litmus test for Trump. That's a litmus test for the administration. I'm not dooming about this. I'm being objective. It is something that needs to be taken care of. You can't be exempting permanently all these industries. Obviously, if he's like, yeah, we'll dictate our resources in these other places, set up some program that will make sure that the farmers don't lose workers overall. Ideally, hopefully, they hire American. But we hung this, we held the signs up, mass deportations. Now, we didn't do that in vain, from what I understand. Donald Trump didn't say we're going to deport every illegal alien in vain. He said it because it's the right thing to do. It's following the law. It's what a serious country would do, law and order. So, these corporations, the establishment, we need to be applying pressure on the administration to make sure they don't do this sort of thing. Yes, I support the administration. There's nothing that would make me want to say that I would, all the people that say, I would have sit this election out or vote for the other side for one idiotic reason or another. Yeah, there's obviously a difference between these two candidates. You can't get away from that. But this is a problem if it happens, and this is why we get to apply pressure. The difference is Donald Trump listens. He listens to his base. He listened to his base in many cases in term one, and it worked. It worked wonders for him, especially when it came to the issue of immigration, for example. But when it comes down to Kamala Harris or even a lot of these other rhino Republicans, you're not going to be able to put as much pressure on them. They're not as receptive to the base as somebody like Donald Trump is. You think somebody like Nikki Haley, she would have struck a deal for amnesty for something, probably more, funding for wars. We'd have troops on the ground, all that nonsense. It would be happening. But that's another thing, foreign policy. That's another litmus test. I'm more white-pilled on this, and I'm not saying that I'm even black-pilled in the whole immigration front. I'm not trying to doom. But when it comes down to the Iran strikes, you have this war between Iran and Israel. It's been brewing for a while now. Israel's not happy with Iran and their funding of Hamas and Hezbollah and having a nuclear weapon. And I think they have every right to protect their existence if they see fit. What they don't have the right to do is drag us into their wars and then make us fight them. That's kind of where I say we should draw the line. I don't like Iran. I don't like these terrorist organizations, but I also don't like war in general. I don't like boots on the ground. And you have too many stupid people on both extremes of the conflict. You'll have one side of rabid war pig neocons that will say everything I said is anti-Semitic, despite it not having anything to do with the Jewish people at all. And you will have the other side that will go out there and say just all sorts of crazy things that are overblown, not true. We see it, it's a genocide. River to the sea, all this stuff that is just nonsense. And they're, basically supporting these terrorists. They'll run cover for Iran, whatever. That's not the point. The main point is that Donald Trump has a different approach than both of these sides that have poisoned online discourse for the past several years, ever since October 7th, because they failed to understand nuance, understand the fact that we are a country in the United States who has our own self-determination, and we've done these regime change wars before. It would turn into one. Now, I support the strikes. They took out, to an extent, on one condition. They take out the nuclear plant. They take out the scientists. They hold back Iran. Iran tries to strike back. They're not very effective when they do it, for the record. They've injured some people. I believe there may be a few casualties, which is bad. And that's a problem. But we don't need people stationed there fighting Iran, trying to topple Iran so some other person can take the reins, and it turns into Iraq all over again. It turns into Afghanistan all over again. It turns into Syria all over again, Libya, all this instability. It's a problem. There needs to be a deal, not an Obama deal where you give them money and there's no effective oversight. There has to be a deal made. Donald Trump has made it clear. He wants to make a deal. He's willing to let Israel fight Iran, but he's not, willing to have them just completely, go out there and just run over, I guess you would say, just forget to be tactical in this. because there was a plan that they wanted to take out the supreme leader. Donald Trump vetoed the plan because he understands that that would lead to more chaos. Trump is, it's funny, they used to call him the chaos candidate in the Republican primary debates when he was running back in 2016. He's actually the opposite. He's the peace president, peace through strength. And he's a pro-Israel guy. I am not anti-Israel either. I'm definitely not pro-Iran. We understand that, but I am pro-America, and I oppose, foreign entanglements whenever necessary. But the pragmatic angle here is that you have a leader who is a strong leader who is going to go out there and negotiate deals. And if he can get that done, that would be huge, because you talk about crisis averted. All the most annoying people in the world will talk about Trump is going to start a war. Trump is going to start a war. And if he's able to avert war, that would be just absolutely massive for his presidency. So these are very big litmus tests for him. You have immigration, you have foreign policy. They're two very key issues. They're what separate Donald Trump from the pack of these do-nothing Republicans from years past. The rhinos. The 2004 Republican Party is dead. It's gone. We don't want to be fighting these wars in the Middle East, and we don't want to be going out there and just saying, oh no, these illegals can stay as long as they're working because they'll do the jobs Americans won't, because that is the liberal lie in many cases. Yes, Americans are not as likely to take a lot of those jobs, picking strawberries for $5 an hour, because they are, going to seek that higher standard of living, and their wages are being undercut by people who will just do anything to stay in the United States, find a workaround way to get on government benefits. And there's a way you could easily stop that, and it's called passing the big beautiful bill. But the Senate Republicans, no, they can't do it. For one reason or another, they can't pass the landmark legislation that would save the country, essentially, because they believe the nonsense, they believe the lies about it. Stephen Miller breaks everything down perfectly. But a lot of these people, they just don't. They ignore it. They ignore the facts. I'm not saying it's perfect. I think they could cut more. I think our defense budget is bloated, by the way. I think that DOGE should be targeting that because we spend the most on it. We spend a lot in entitlements. I don't want to take people's Social Security away, but I do want to make sure that we don't have any people on Social Security who don't have it. We have to find ways to cut costs if you want to lower the deficit. That's all important. It's not my number one issue, but the truth is that the bill tends to pay for itself and then some if you actually do the math and don't buy into the Congressional Budgetary Office's nonsense. They were wrong about the last tax bill. They're even more shamelessly wrong about this tax bill, but they give the left a lot of fodder, and the right is dumb. Trump can set the narrative. He's not like out there doing rallies every day, but he could set the narrative. But these other Republicans, the Republicans can set the narrative. Now, the Democrats have problems too with that. This whole taco nonsense didn't go anywhere. But Republicans really have there's so much they could easily do that they choose not to do. And they're really holding back the future of the party, because you could have this electoral renaissance for the 2030s, and you could have this close to filibuster-proof majority if you just follow the Trump playbook and how to win, and they don't do it. And it's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating. And what's not frustrating is the comedy that we saw from the left. And we could look at this because you have the No Kings protests that were happening all across the United States. And usually it was very dull. You had a lot of old people. And you'll have people that'll say that I have an anti-boomer bias because I've called out the failures of the previous generations. I don't think everybody's implicated. I think there's plenty of boomers that agree. Most boomers are, I would say, or at least about half of them are right-wing. They are on the MAGA side, but you also have the Democrat boomer who is very stuck in their ways, and they consume mainstream media, and they're just NPCs. They think they're intelligent because they watch CNN. That's the type of person we're dealing with. If you actually interact with any one of these people, you would find out very quickly that they're basically NPCs. But you have these people that are going out there that are saying, no kings. And it's like Donald Trump is not a king. He's a king, but he's not the king of America. Because if you had a dictator, if you had a king, what would that person do? What would that person be able to do? Enact their agenda without being compromised by all these people that are trying to hold it up for the most innocuous reasons. And it's ridiculous that you have this going on, but it's 100% true. The king can't pass his agenda without unelected bureaucrats, rhinos, purist grandstanders who in effect end up being rhinos despite being like the principled crowd. They're striking down his agenda, which is a slam dunk layup for the most innocuous reasons possible. And the funny thing is if Trump was actually a dictator and just got everything done within one day, dictator on day one. Remember, they tried to use that. It's obviously like a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, like a joke, but they took it seriously. But his approval rating, if he did everything, would actually be like in the 70s. He wouldn't even have to shut down the media to get there. Well, maybe he would with all these people. But it's a little bit of an exaggeration. But the bottom line is that Trump is a strong leader. They don't like that because he stands against their nonsense agenda. And that is why they're calling him out to be some tyrant king, which it's funny because the protests happened not just in the United States, they happened all around the world. They happened in Canada. They happened in the United Kingdom. No kings, but they had to change it. They changed it to no tyrants because no kings doesn't really work there because they're actually monarchies, which is pretty funny and ironic. But these protests were a joke. The Democrats don't have any energy. You have just a bunch of boomers holding signs. A lot of these people are probably Democratic Party activists. Democrats have been admitting that these protests were actually like a massive flop, and that's them being honest because they were. There's no way to get around it. They were a massive flop. And this kind of came in the wake of some political violence drama because you had a shooting, and this is the last thing we'll talk about, take place in the state of Minnesota where this guy, Vance Bolter, who they have not released the manifesto, which is strange, but he was targeting liberal groups, abortion clinics, and Democrats. Of course, the media is going to say, blame the right, but we don't even know his motive. We don't know the guy's motive. And here's a meme about it. It's not really to make light of the situation, but it's to accurately describe how just mentally off the wall these people tend to be. And this guy worked for the government, which is the off-left quadrant, appointed by Tim Walz, actually. He was appointed by Tim Walz. His wife worked for Tim Walz. His friends did say that he was on the Trump side of things as well, which, of course, the media is going to run with that and try to downplay the other side of things. And it is true that he targeted, shot, and killed Democratic politicians. Was a CEO of this charity that you can't find information about. It was called the Red Lion Group. Poor Red Lion, he can't catch a break without his name being caught up in something. And he was also on the board of a Pan-African, very far left pro-immigration group as well, which but it also kind of tied into evangelical Christianity. And he would go pray or he'd give sermons in Africa. And I saw another tweet that kind of put things in perspective because you have so many people on the left, they will say, this guy's a right-winger. He's proof that right-wingers are all violent and evil, which it's ironic because one of the people he targeted in the Minnesota State House actually was under fire from the Democrats because she sided with the Republicans when it came down to illegal immigration, removing these people from healthcare. She caught a lot of fire. So initially the possibility that people thought of was that he was to the left of her, because we saw this with the Josh Shapiro house fire bomber. He was on the left, even though he targeted a Democrat. This guy probably was a little bit more of a strange case. You can't really pin him down. And you have the team sport thing. The people on the right will say, no, he worked for Walz, so he was on the left. And I'm not going to play this game. It's a tragedy that it happened. Political violence is not acceptable. It's not. This is not the way that people should be doing things in this country. I don't care what side he's on. He's a bad guy. He has mental problems. Normal people don't do this shit. They just don't. That's all you need to know. And there was a post I saw from, I believe it was Data Republican, who said, You aren't going to like this post, but it needs to be said about this guy. At first, I assumed he was a grifter. His Red Lion group has no paper trail. His side business looks like a cash grab. The more I dug, the more different it looks. He was a 7-Eleven manager, constantly promoted himself as a corporate executive. He claims the title doctor, that from some, like, I don't even know if it's a real doctorate that he has, chased every opportunity to get in front of an audience. So he was actually working for Governor Walz. Walz appointed him to a position, and he went to African churches working with this like far left group, and he was preaching vague positive platitudes to foreign audiences. And Data Republican suspects that he wanted to be somebody, he wanted to be followed. And he's a man addicted to attention and status, tried to get it through a lot of means. Committed violence is a last desperate attempt to be glorified under the delusion that killing all these people would make him some sort of martyr or hero. And again, Data Republican said, I watch his sermons. It's not Christianity. They're designed to provoke emotional applause, not spiritual convictions. So he was a narcissist, he was a manipulator, and he resorted to violence. He was not an evangelical or MAGA. He was a man who couldn't stand being ordinary. And that's what this is about. I mean, the problem is you have a mental illness problem. It's not really about politics. Sometimes I feel like these, it's a little bit questionable when you get to somebody like a Crooks, because it's like, how do you let this guy get in this position? And he's got all this. I mean, you could do this meme for almost every single political or person who commits such political violence because of the fact that they're mentally ill. Luigi Mangione, he's mentally ill. He's on the left. And he did have some old right-wing posts as well on certain matters. So you have these people that are just deranged. The problem is not politics. The problem is deranged people, godless people. This guy was like a performative evangelical. He wasn't actually like a real, I guess you would say, person who believed what he was saying. It was largely just he was doing it for himself, and he was just a crazy person. And that's kind of the main takeaway. The left will try to play, team sport politics. The right will as well. I think the problem is you have this mental illness problem. You have people that'll blame the gun when it's a mass shooting that's not related to the politics. They won't talk about a gun in a case like this because it's more convenient for them to blame MAGA, despite, even if this guy is MAGA, he's like one person out of 77 million people. The rest, 77 million, believe that this guy's crazy. In fact, they even are willing to believe that he's on the left because he is so, disassociated from their values when it comes down to doing stuff like this. So either way, I'm not going to play the team sport politics about it. I think the whole thing is horrible. I think it's a horrible tragedy. And I mean, the problem is mental illness. It's not guns. It's not even politics, because there's so many people that are highly invested in politics that don't behave like this. They don't do stuff like this. So, you have a lot of dishonest people on the left, and they're going to try to actually put this. And it's funny because if you look at the studies and data, there's more mental illness on the left, but it doesn't mean that the right's immune from it. Of course, there's going to be crazy people on every side. I just try to stay the hell away from them, and I think most people try to stay the hell away from crazy people in general. So we're going to get to the super chats. We had a long monologue, but it's time. And let's see what we've got here. Okay, we got 4 out of the 10 for our goal. Some person for 2 says thoughts on former Ohio Congressman John Ash. I don't know who that is. Is he a real person? I'm going to regret looking this up, won't I? He's like a social media person, it seems. I don't know anything about him. I can't believe YouTube allows really long names while insane for £5. Says off topic, but who is your favorite president, starting with Kennedy and ending with Carter? It seems to be a period where each president was bad. I probably would have to say Nixon. I'm not going to do this revisionist history where, Nixon's a great president. He was not, atrocious. He had that, the scandal that sunk his reputation among the general public, whether people want to believe it was overblown or not. I think that, what you saw with Biden was far worse than Watergate. But there was not a lot of great in that time period. I mean, Ford was pretty bland. I don't think anybody really remembers much about Ford. He's probably one of the most forgettable presidents. Graf Panzer for 20 says, I don't think Trump should be giving corporations, farmers a free pass for hiring illegal aliens. They should be punished, either in jail or a huge... Exactly, I agree. Or a huge fine to discourage incentives for illegal immigrants coming to the U.S. Exactly. You have these corporations. They should be punished. I mean, this is what we need to do. Illegal workers on temp visas, I'm not the biggest fan of. I think you should try to hire American, but it makes more sense that if there needs to be some, shortage filled, you resort to that. You don't let these people stay. So is there some alternative angle you can take that's 3D, 4D chess? Yes, there is. I think that it's more viable than so many people who will just laugh at the notion that it's possible for 4D chess. And we've covered how many times Trump has done it and how many times he hasn't. What I really don't want this to be is that Trump was sat down by farmer. I don't think it's donors, by the way. Donors, he doesn't answer to donors. He already won. He can't run again. They have to change the Constitution. It's not going to happen. He'll be too old anyways. He doesn't have plans to run again. So he's not answering to the donors. This is his time to go scorched earth. Who cares what happens? You'll have the Senate forever. You'll probably be popular enough come 2028 to get Vance to beat that broken disgrace of a party on the other side. So, all things considered, he needs to do the right thing or he's going to have a problem, because so many people that voted for him to get the job done. I'm not saying every illegal has to be gone, but I'm saying the efforts need to be taken. You can't be shielding these people. Roku Fan 1835 says the real No Kings protest is on July 4th. Well, I know July 4th of 2026 is going to be where you have the big parade, because I know Trump had the parade for the army, which coincided with his birthday. But I get what you're saying. I get the joke, but there probably will be some massive protests to Donald Trump celebrating the 250th birthday. And of course, John Fetterman takes the political layup that, oh no, it's for the army. It's a good thing whether you like the president or not. Now there's rumors saying he might switch parties or at least pull a cinema. I don't think he's there. I don't think he's there yet. I don't know if he'll ever get there. I think it'd be a bit of a grift. But is it possible? I mean, if his approval rating stays as low as it is in the Democratic primary, he might try to become the reverse Arlen Specter. The problem is that his voting record is not solid. There's no Fetterman plan to trust. He's just doing what he has to do to get reelected. And I don't even know if it's going to work, because he's just making a lot of people angry. The people that buy into him, he'll piss them off about something so dumb of a political layup, like about, men and women's sports or something like that. He'll side with the far left on that, despite trying to seem sensible. And then he loses that support. So he's not really in the best position either. Linerex52 for 10 says, I think Trump will work something out that makes sense. He has to do a balancing act. One can imagine farmers may need a grace period of transition so we don't come up short on food, etc. I understand that. That part is technically true. I think that like I said, there's two ways that this is fine. One is it's temporary, which I think could even create a backlog of job applications and make deportations easier. Or if it's just not true, which it seems to be true. So I think that the end goal needs to remain the same, and people need to be deported. We don't need to be shielding industries, because that means illegals will just cling on to those industries. Even if you say, well, actually 80% don't work in those industries, we can still deport those people. It's still those people are going to try to get in jobs at those industries. And even the rhetoric will encourage more border crossings illegally, because they'll be like, oh, he's not deporting anymore. We'll do it. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. Time will tell. I don't know how long this is even going to be the case, but Trump does change on the fly. And if he sees that, maybe if it's a month or two, that's one thing, but he's got to get moving on it altogether. He wants to move on deportations, but I don't think that you can sit here and shield industries that have been cheating off of this fake cheap labor, because you talk to some farmers who are not even representative of your average farmer. They're big agricultural farmers. So Politics Today for 10 says, seeing as the other protests made the whole Project 2025 narrative flop, do you think these will get rid of the whole democracy argument from the Democrats. I don't think that they will. I think that it's always been a LARP for them. They've been on record saying that, well, democracy sometimes is bad when the outcome is anti-democratic or whatever. And it's like the American people have to decide on something. That's what democracy is. If certain groups of people, and it's a majority, they want some sort of like strong leadership, even dare I use the word dictatorship, that's technically democracy. That's what it is. But they view democracy as, oh, it's fine so long as it's the donor class, so long as it's the elites, the corporations, so long as that's what's driving the conversation, driving the way politicians vote on certain things. That's the issue. John Waffle H2P says, what would AOC be to the Hispanic vote? I don't think she would do that well. I mean, I don't think she's peeling off Hispanic Trump voters. Maybe she'll energize Hispanic liberals more, but that's about it. And I think she'd be awful. I think overall she would be a very atrocious candidate. She'd do worse than Kamala Harris would probably in that department. I mean, she's just awful. J.R. Williams for 5 says they're saying Trump is sending mixed signals and is gaslighting the war. He sent 300 Hellfire missiles while peace talks were still underway. Well, either way, he's trying to get a deal done. There's going to be some, back and forth here for sure, where he's approving of the missiles being sent. He's approving of Israel striking the nuclear facility, because if you're able to do that and take it out, it's going to be a lot harder for them to rebuild it. And also they're going to be more likely to make a deal, because now it's like, okay, well, we don't have our nuclear site anyways, but maybe we'll get some consolation prize out of it because we're backed into a corner. Like, some of the rhetoric does need to be tough. Like, people don't understand this about Trump. He's not a isolationist or even like a non-interventionist in like the traditional sense. He's somebody who operates on the fly. He'll threaten to bomb the shit out of you while still trying to make a deal with you. He threatened to bomb Moscow if Putin entered Ukraine, and Putin didn't do it till Biden got in office, and then they say Trump is owned by Putin. So, it's a little bit of a back and forth, and Trump does this. He'll be tough on Putin. He'll be tough on Zelensky. They go back and forth because, honestly, both of them are like the children in the room fighting. It's like a lot of the conflicts across the world are just people fighting over something that they could just easily strike a deal on. I feel like that's really just the case. It's like, oh no, this happened historically, so we have to do this. And then it's like, oh no, they did this, then they did this, then they did this. It's how every foreign policy debate goes. And it's like, if we could just put aside these things and just try to aim for peace through strength, that's the Trump doctrine. And it's also become the Marco Rubio doctrine as well, in terms of his Secretary of State. Even though he might seem a little bit more hawkish at times than he has been in the past. Stephen Knizik says, as an Elvis Presley fan, I just want to show how sad I am that so many anti-King protests happened on Saturday. Tom Otto for 10 says, I've been very forgiving of 47 mistakes, but the deportation pause is the first real L. My only hope is that Miller will make his voice heard more than corrupt Brooke Rollins, who lobbied for this. I agree. Rollins was fine for, food prices. But that's food prices are fine, but what's you have to pay the price for actual national sovereignty. And we have to now make sure that we're not going to have people who are going to dictate the policy to weaken the policy. Now, if farmers have legitimate shortages, temp workers, whatever, that's one thing. But this pause, it better be short. It better be short, and there better be some motive behind it, because if not, it will be a problem. I don't think you could sugarcoat it. I love Trump and I want to see him thrive and succeed. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be saying that. So, take it from there if people are upset at me saying that. I don't think very many people will be. I think a lot of people agree with what I'm saying. They may be more optimistic. I think I'm relatively optimistic, though. Thomas Willingham for 2 says, I voted Trump 3 times. Better not lose my Medicaid. Well, are you an illegal alien, or are you somebody who can work but doesn't? If not, then you should be fine. A lot of it is fear-mongering. Mike Oxard is back for 2, says, so on Social Security, are we still giving money to 150-year-olds? That's an interesting question. I don't know. I assume a lot of those people that are getting it are illegal aliens, and if they're deported, committing the Social Security fraud, that should lower the numbers. That's why mass deportations and the national debt and the economy go hand in hand. And it's why when you deport the illegals, the economy improves for Americans. The jobs numbers for Americans have been great since Trump took office. The income numbers have been even better. Inflation is cooled. We'd like it to cool more. Gas prices have been up and down. It really just depends on where you are. I've seen it for under $2.50 at Costco, and then 2 miles down the road, it's been like $2.99. It's like, what's going on? But regardless, I'd say that the economy is headed in the right direction so long as you have these mass deportations. And the next domino is going to be the housing costs, because now that there's more availability, it's going to go down, and that's going to cause a lot of other things to go down too. It's less money people are going to be spending on rent, more money people are going to be spending elsewhere in the economy. So Eric CB912 says, I live near Orlando. I saw larger crowds for BLM in 2020 and Trayvon Martin in 2013 than I did yesterday. That's kind of, no disrespect. It's kind of like saying water's wet. I mean, we understand that BLM was like a big thing. They had a lot of people. People would always talk about the rally size between Trump and Biden, and they would say that was proof that nobody would vote for Biden and Trump would win by like 80. And the problem is that the BLM protest is basically the Biden rally. Nobody's excited for Biden, but like their religion is opposing Trump and everything sane, normal, good, and that's what they really get behind. They don't really have enthusiasm for their candidates as much. But I'm not saying that there wasn't any shenanigans. There were a lot of shenanigans in 2020. We understand that, but some of the memes about it were not the best arguments to be made. American Nerd 1776 says Nixon was a great president who was framed. He may have been framed. I do think there's plenty of other arguments against Nixon's presidency than Watergate. I will say that there's plenty of things that he did that, he expanded the size of government significantly. Some of his policy that he passed was pretty weak. A martyr, yes, but somebody who was like perfect or spotless, not really. Also, thoughts on the parade from the Army's... I didn't actually see it, so I don't have that many thoughts on the parade. Jacob Hawley for $50. By the way, we're still 5 out of 10 for our goal. So if you guys would like to help us reach our goal, feel free to send in a 10 or a yellow super chat or above. We still have 600 people in chat. And like the stream, let's get to 500 likes on stream. But Jacob Hawley for 50 says, Democrats, I'm sorry, but these protests have completely turned me away. They're blocking me in traffic, yelling and screaming at drivers, and they were all literally 50 years old. That is your coalition now. Props to the peaceful people, though. Yeah, it's true. Southern Missouri for 5 says, I will say there are still a lot of aliens in construction, transportation, and lawn and building care. Also, senators need to get their act together now. Yeah, I mean, you have this bill. You have the ball on the 1-yard line. You can win. You can win the Super Bowl, but nope. We're gonna take the D because we can't win like this. We're not gonna win by enough. But you can't mathematically win by enough, Rand and Ron Johnson and all these other people. It's like you can't do it. But it's right there. Just take the victory and see what happens. Just see what happens. So let's see. John Waffle H2P says Agnew would have been a great president. I'm not familiar too much with him, so I can't really say. Base Cat with a member chat says went to the Trump parade in D.C. yesterday. Nice to see all the MAGA patriots supporting the troops. I only saw like a couple protesters. Yeah, D.C.'s been dead in terms of protests. I mean, there have been protests in certain... California has been crazy lately, but D.C., not so much. Not so much. J.R. Williams for 5 says, why doesn't ICE target the massive illegal DoorDash industry? That's true. We don't need them. 3/4 can't speak English and just hold up their phones. They need to go. That's the number one company that should be targeted is DoorDash or all these other delivery services, because you have these people. They don't know how to get in the building. It's like everybody else can do it except these people because they don't speak English. They don't understand basic instruction. Many of them don't even deliver the right order. I mean, if there's any argument of anything that will ever just like wake people up on immigration, Just get DoorDash. Try DoorDash for something. Seriously. So there's that. Dova Budgie 100 says swear on your Tim's Trump isn't legalizing these aliens. Thank you for the 2. So we are now, let's see, we're 6 out of 10 to the goal. Tucson PaleoCon for 10 says, please join me in praying for peace in the Middle East. I agree with that. We need peace. I think peace should be the goal. I've seen people on both sides celebrate civilian deaths and things like that, and it's just that's not what this should be about. I understand that sometimes you have to fight to get to that resolution, but peace is what we should be aiming for sure. But this, it's the same argument in terms of the immigration thing. It's the same argument the Democrats made about illegal immigration, and it's the same argument they made about slavery. Who's going to pick the crops and actually hurt the economy? So if slavery hurt the economy, and it hurts every economy in the world when they actually opened up the industry, it did better. I'm not talking about the major plantation owners. They were fine. I think the term millionaire was first invented out of the South at the antebellum period. But the whole thing about the this argument, it doesn't add up. The economy does fine without it. It does completely fine without it, and it's the same argument. Dovo Budgie 100 says, is it true regarding the legalization? Well, there's no legalization of the illegals, but this is something that kind of, I guess you would say, is like a pause on a certain industry. But I think it's a really bad precedent if he does it. It's false data. I don't know why he's doing it. Is he trying to get the media to shift onto something else? Because it contradicts everything he's been saying. So hopefully it's not, the agricultural secretary said this had to happen, when the agricultural industry's been fine, food prices have been dropping. There's no need to stop doing this. There's no need to stop doing it. So let's see. We're 3 away, guys. We're 3 away. I don't know if we can get there or not. 3 away from reaching our goal. Thomas Willingham for 5 says, Andy Jackson and J.K. Polk, both Democrats and the greatest presidents, period. Not that many great presidents, to be honest. Well, Polk is the most underrated president of his expansion of the nation, achieving manifest destiny, serving 1 term when he easily could have served a 2nd term. That probably lowered his ranking in a lot of people's minds in terms of their legacy. But Polk was definitely a top 10 president just based off of what he did there alone. So absolutely, Polk, he's up there. There's a lot of great presidents over time, for sure. So let's see. We don't have any more super chats. We're 3 away from the goal. If you guys want to send in a yellow super chat or above, feel free. We're probably gonna, I guess you would say we're 57 minutes in. We could talk more about this. We could read regular chat. There's a lot going on. There's been a lot going on lately. They captured the suspect in Minnesota. There's that. The war is still ramping up. Something needs to give in that department. Trump says a deal will come soon. So we'll see. Hopefully, what we're trying to do is avoid war. We're trying to avoid the United States being wrapped up in the conflicts. That's what we've been trying to do. That's priority number 1. This is not about. It's not even just about people are going to need to pick a side of this thing. There obviously is a better side than not. You could say that, but at the same time, the main side that we need to be on is the side of peace. Somebody who would like to see the Iran nuclear site completely demolished, I think that peace needs to be our priority. And I think that now that it's been demolished, I think you can get there faster in my opinion. You can get there faster. There's going to need to be a deal made, not an Obama deal, a real deal, not just a Band-Aid, but like an actual plan that can get done and be used. So Riley Moore says, rumor has it the Senate might have all the votes to pass the big, beautiful bill on Monday. I don't know if that's true, but that would be a massive victory if that happened tomorrow. I've heard nothing about that, but I would love to see it happen. Tucson Paleocons has ever been to the Gulf countries. Would you like to go someday? And we hit the goal, guys. We hit the goal. The Gulf countries is in like Qatar, Dubai, or the UAE. Yeah, UAE is very nice. A lot of stuff going on there. I'm not going to say that these countries aren't, full of some very shady people doing all these, deals or whatever, but I think that they'd be great tourist destinations for sure. Southern Missouri for 10 says, did you see the $20 million Democrat synopsis on why young men don't like them? Did they do that yet, or are they just announcing it? I mean, that was like a couple weeks ago. If they really burned $20 million in that time frame, they didn't find out anything in particular. We might have to do a full video on the young men leaving the Democrats. We might have to do a whole, documentary on that if I have the time. The updated Texas documentary video, that's huge. There's a lot of videos we want to make. This month, I'd like to get the Senate and governor's tier list out there. So John Waffle H2P for 10, the super chat that made us hit our goal, says JFK is the most overrated president ever. Shows us how unintelligent the historians are. He's overrated. He is overrated. That part is true. I mean, just because he passed away early, people tend to whitewash his legacy. It's like he was LBJ driving the speed limit. Make no mistake about it. He would have gotten there. XJ Cherokee Bear for 2 says Walls has blood on his. I don't know if I'd say that, but I will say that the fact they're not releasing the manifesto makes me believe that it's not really all that political, or it's not what not in a way the Democrats would like to positively spin it. And if you have it, I think it should be released in some form. I guess you'd have to release it unredacted. Because you could make the case, it's in the public interest to know. Whenever it's done, like the Tennessee shooting, which was done by a transsexual individual, that shooting was, it was obvious what the motive was. They wouldn't release it. Somebody got a copy of it down the line, and it turns out that it was exactly what we thought. But if it's like an actual far right attack, it usually comes out fast. As for what this was, it seems like it has the makings of a right-winger attacking the left. I don't know if his Walls appointment was really relevant to this at all, but it's more of him being a crazy person. And I think that if that got out there, the whole narrative would shift in a way that would not be favorable to the Democrats, because now they can just blame it on Republicans and Trump and MAGA and whatever, despite the fact that Donald Trump has literally suffered 2 assassination attempts that were, where he had a viable shot of dying, one way more so than the other. That was insane how he took the bullet directly about an inch away from death. So that's brutal. But thankfully he moved at the right time. Looking at that chart, he survived. But to pretend that political violence, and again, I think that guy could have very well been somebody's asset as well. I'm not saying that it was it was not probably, if I had to guess, a lone wolf. They haven't confirmed it, but it's strange that they haven't confirmed anything. So American Nerd 76 for 10 says, who's the most badass president? I'm split on Jackson and Roosevelt. One gave almost an hour-long speech after getting shot. The other beat up the guy who tried to off him. Yeah, probably Roosevelt. I think Trump is up there as well. I think that there's plenty of great leaders that we could point to that have been pretty badass over the years. I'd say that. But people that take a bullet, they get extra points on that one. And I think that Trump and Teddy are both iconic in that regard. Also, George Washington, people will ignore him. We wouldn't have a country without him. He crossed the Delaware. He won the Revolutionary War. He Was the first president we had. In that regard, I don't think anybody could really top him, but that's just a personal point of opinion. I mean, it depends. Some people are leaders. They're fit for the time. They rise to the occasion. Those tend to be the greatest presidents of all time. And I think that the next few years will determine if Donald Trump is going to enter that category. But I think he's got a much better shot at doing so if he's able to pass his economic agenda. I will say that. I will say that. But yeah. All right. I think we're going to wrap things up. It's getting a little bit late. Make sure you guys like the stream before we go for sure. Thomas Willingham with the final super chat of the night says the FBI is still trash. Well, I mean, that I think is going to be a long process to gut. I think it will be very long before that's gutted. Secession Now for 5 says the big beautiful bill is the nail in the coffin for the USA bond market. Also, trolling account super chat for $2 says happy Father's Day. Yeah, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there as well. Can't forget about that. I know it's past that on the East Coast, but for everybody not on the East Coast, happy Father's Day. Everyone on the East Coast, happy slightly belated Father's Day. I know we got a lot of them in the audience. So without further ado, guys, like the stream, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another stream. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. I'll see you guys tomorrow in a video. Red Eagle out.